Sick Harrison Price for Monday, April 27th, 2026. We're a presentation of Bet365. Check out Bet365's 3-goal early payout. When your team goes up 3, you get paid. It's that simple. Download the app today. Must be 19 plus. Please play responsibly. Matt Sakaris with Blake Price, 4-time Juno Award winner Mike Rogerson, hitting switches and conducting things with intern Elijah Ford. Coming to you from the Pacific Toyota Dealer Studio here at the historic Wall Center. Visit shoptoyota.ca or visit your local Pacific Toyota dealer today. How was your weekend?
Busy. Worked, obviously, on Saturday. So spent a lot of time doing that. And then yesterday I was planting trees and chopping trees down. And, yeah, busy. But fun. And watched a lot of sports.
Yeah, great.
So many of these local teams in action.
Absolutely.
And we actually were able to see it. Like, even if you couldn't get out to the Rise of the Warriors, they were on TV, which was nice. So it was a sporting weekend.
Made it to both of the Friday nooner and the Saturday Vancouver Canadians game. Slid by there on my way home from work. Set aside time to watch the Warriors. More on them later in the program. And, yeah, lots of Stanley Cup playoffs, NBA playoffs, the NFL draft. I mean, April, truly one of the great times of year for a sports fan. Although I got to say, I'm not as into the hockey playoffs this year as I have been years past. I don't exactly know why that is either.
That's fair for me, too. And I think for a lot of people, it might just be they started to wean themselves off of the Canucks so early that I think just the hockey fan residue is just not thick enough for you to be investing necessarily. Now, hopefully some stories get authored. You know, a couple of sweeps didn't help things and more series can end tonight. You know, the more sweeps and 5-game series there are, I think that is not good to get you know, the neutral fan like us.
Well, it's funny. The guys on the golf course were saying, quite enjoyed some of those Carolina, Ottawa, and LA, Colorado games. The problem is, it was 3 buzz when we were talking. Now they're done. And we got some 3-1s here as well to take a look at. Anyways, we'll get into that in a second. But, of course, we start with the Vancouver Canucks and the daily poll question. What's more important to the Canucks' future? The first overall pick or getting the right general manager? You can vote at the Sakaris Price X and YouTube channels. This is a very big week for the Canucks. This is a very big couple weeks coming up for the Canucks, with next Tuesday, May 5th, being the NHL Draft Lottery. We will find out their fate, whether they pick first overall for the first time in franchise history, second overall, or third overall. It's one of those 3 doors. Kind of like, let's make a deal. It's one of those 3 doors. You know you're going to get one of those draft slots. Of course, best odds to pick first overall, but most likely outcome is the third overall choice. So, and you know the candidates, Gavin McKenna, the fine winger from Penn State University, who we learned is joining Canada for the World Hockey Championships. Ivar Stenberg, the Swedish winger, who's been right there with McKenna neck and neck through this season. And, we think those are the only 2 candidates to go first overall, but there's some buzz about Caleb Malhotra, Manny's son, center with the Brantford OHL team, or even one of these defensemen, the first defenseman to go off the board in the mix there at 2 and 3.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see till the end of the season, sort of how much more helium players can get. There's still a few players out there in the offing that are playing, whether it's with their club teams in the CHL playoffs or at the U18s. In the case of McKenna, of course, at the men's world. So there's still some movement possible. But then there's that 4 weeks where everybody's pretty much done, and you just talk yourself into things and out of things, and it's a dangerous 4 weeks because nobody's playing, and yet you're changing your opinion just by virtue of being a human being, I think, more than anything else.
Look, I understand first overall is a sexy pick, something the Canucks have never done in their history. The potential to add the most game-changing player of them all in this 2026 NHL draft. And if that player was someone like Connor McDavid or Macklin Celebrini or Connor Bedard, I would vote first overall in a heartbeat. Alas, I'm not sure Gavin McKenna is of that quality. Closer maybe to a Yuri Slafkovsky, an Owen Power, Aaron Ekblad, a good player, a part of your core, but maybe not your standalone pillar franchise player. Could be. Don't want to limit him. He's 18 years old. He's got a very bright future regardless. The comparisons there are Nikita Kucherov, Patrick Kane. Needless to say, if he hits Nikita Kucherov levels, that is a franchise pillar. That is a franchise player and somebody who is at the center of your core. But for me, the right general manager is going to have vastly more influence over vastly more seasons, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
if theoretically you're hiring a general manager for the next 7 to 10 years, right? Which, if you get the first overall pick, maybe he plays here that much. Okay, maybe their 10 years are both long here in Vancouver. But he's only going to influence one position on your team. Maybe he makes other players better. That'd be great. The GM is going to have a massive, massive say in the total composition of the 23-man roster, not to mention the organization writ large. So I voted accordingly.
Yeah, I there are a lot of good first overall picks that are just good. Alexis Lafreniere, good player. Taylor Hall won a Hart Trophy, for God's sakes, but he bounced around the league, didn't become a cornerstone player for anybody. There's ways that the Canucks can get first overall, get the guy that they want, probably Gavin McKenna, and it still doesn't really fortify them for the next decade. The actions of the next GM just will. So to me, it's an objective choice. To me, there's not a lot of subjectivity to this poll question. It's just materially, this year in particular, it's going to be the GM. You're right. If it was Macklin Celebrini available, even knowing only what we knew on draft day of Macklin Celebrini's draft a couple of years ago, even just with that knowledge, never mind what we've seen since, I think we knew that was a different draft.
It's funny because I hear some of the commentary about Macklin, and if he wasn't a Vancouver kid, maybe we wouldn't know as intimately, but I felt like those of us in this studio, those of us in Vancouver, knew Macklin was every bit a first overall difference maker.
Yeah.
I think some people, because they had heard so much about Connor Bedard in the lead up to his draft, sort of viewed it as like, oh, well, here's another kid from Vancouver, but he's not quite Connor Bedard. Well, the two of us and some others here in Vancouver are like, no, this guy could be every bit Bedard.
Given all the Bedard hype, you're right. I think people were just like, well, what are the chances there's a guy from down the street that's also
There's another
that good?
North Shore guy who's
also that good.
Yeah, who's a day one difference maker in the NHL. Well,
and
he's a day one difference maker in the NHL.
Like, when is the last time two guys were drafted back-to-back first overall that lived a kilometer away from each other? Like, it hasn't happened. So, pretty crazy.
Yeah, Macklin even played up a level at one point and in Bedard's class. So, anyways, you can cast your votes at the Sekerson Price X and YouTube channels. Still having trouble with the tabulation of votes on X, but whatever, your vote may count or may not. It's funny because Mike sees the back end and everything that's going on there, and then it just displays.
You're not going to believe this one, though.
What?
YouTube's now doing the same thing.
Oh, my goodness. How about that?
It's showing 0 votes.
Why are they hating polls so much? These social media platforms.
I have a political answer for that, though I'll keep to myself.
Yeah. Gotcha. Let's get to our top story, brought to you by Yellow Dog Brewing, Neighborhood Brewing, Yellow Dog Spirits and Foolish Winery. A fourth confirmed candidate has entered the chat. And the Canucks are mining beautiful British Columbia for GM contenders. A massive week for the search and for the franchise. Kicks off with plenty of news today. Elliot Friedman says he is working to confirm 5 other names outside of the Canucks have interviewed, outside of the confirmed candidates. That, of course, is Assistant General Manager Ryan Doan, Toronto Maple Leafs Executive Shane Doan, former Buffalo Sabres General Manager Kevin Adams, and Edmonton GM Bill Scott. We'll get to, or AGM Bill Scott.
You said Ryan Doan. You meant Ryan Bonus, yes.
Shane Doan.
Mm-hmm. Ryan Bonus, yeah. You put 2 Doans in the mix. There's only one Doan, it's Shane.
Yeah. Ryan Johnson.
Ryan Johnson.
Ryan Johnson. Yeah. Shane, thank you for the catch.
Yeah.
Ryan Johnson, AGM of the Canucks. Shane Doan, Leafs executive. Kevin Adams, former Sabres GM. And Bill Scott, assistant general manager of the Edmonton Oilers. Elliot mentioned some of these names have BC connections. That is something the Canucks have looked at. It's not necessarily guys who are ex-Canucks, but people have ties, connections to our province. Will they play the BC card? Of course, they did so with Castlegar's Travis Green a number of years ago as head coach, trotted him out, and we're sure to mention he was a BC born and bred head coach of the Vancouver Canucks. It turns out they hired a pretty good coach. Alas, they didn't keep his roster together after the 2020 bubble playoff run, turned off the taps during the pandemic, and set the franchise back. Now, Thomas Drance says he's hearing they're wrapping up the first round of interviews for the GM vacancy, a short list to be decided in the next 48 hours or so, and then in-person interviews, so we'll need all our airport spies at YVR. And Drance reporting 15 to 20 Zoom interviews have been conducted, and they haven't been conducted solely by President Jim Rutherford, which is interesting. I sure hope, because we heard about the 3 lists, I sure hope this isn't Francesco, Doyle, and Rutherford independently doing Zoom interviews without the other guys, or with just 2 of the 3. We talked about it all last week. 3 lists could be very good process because you want to cast a wide net, you want a lot of intel on your hockey club, and you want to come to the table with no stone unturned. 3 lists could also be cumbersome, clunky, and if people get territorial over it, could be very bad process for the Vancouver Canucks. So you hope they're on the same page. You hope the owner isn't just going through the motions with his 2 deputies, Michael Doyle on the business side, Jim Rutherford on the hockey side, before making the decision on his own. But, of course, there's not a lot of transparency to this process. There very rarely is, and so we are only left to trust in Canucks Sports Entertainment and their process. As for the news, Canucks seeking permission to talk with Edmonton Assistant General Manager Bill Scott, who was also interviewed by the Nashville Predators. John Shannon had it yesterday, and it should surprise no one if the Canucks are casting that wide net. John writes he'll interview via Zoom for the open GM spot with the Canucks. We talked to David Pagnotta later in the program, who tells us he does not believe Bill Scott remains an active candidate with Nashville, who have not yet hired Barry Trotz's replacement, but that decision is expected shortly. Bill Scott is the son of a longtime agent, Gil Scott. Now, Gil represents more coaches and managers in the National Hockey League, as well as football players on both sides of the border, NFL and CFL players. As per the Oilers website, Bill Scott's responsibilities include player and staff contract negotiations, scheduling, salary arbitration, salary cap management, and all the day-to-day administrative duties. So this is somebody who comes to this interview more from the business background, the Lawrence Gilman, if you will. That's the
cap management,
that side of the equation, less so from the pure scouting background. Started as GM of the Oklahoma City Barons, which was then the Edmonton AHL franchise in the 2010-2011 season. So he's had a decade and a half run here in NHL front office. He became Edmonton's GM in 2014. He has spent some time as their director of salary cap management. The other thing is he's been through a lot of administrations there, right? Like we talked about this with Ryan Johnson. We talked about this with Judd Brackett back in the day, the Canucks director of amateur scouting. When you've got a guy who can survive through different administrations, different people above them who normally have their own people they want to put in place, it tends to speak quite well on the candidate, right? That you're able to work with a multitude of administrations, that you made an impression on new boss after new boss after new boss, and there have been a lot of them with the Edmonton Oilers over the last 15 years.
Okay. So his name comes up, and it hadn't been talked about a ton before it came up as an official candidate. This is a guy that does Ryan Johnson's job, but with the Edmonton Oilers.
Mm-hmm.
So, again, you just signed Ryan Johnson to, on the relative scale, a lucrative contract to do this job. You don't do that unless you like the job that Ryan Johnson is doing. But you're going to go interview some other team's Ryan Johnson for a team. And again, he's not the final decision maker, but a team that notoriously is missing obvious holes in its organization. And it ultimately might waste the tenure of two of the best players that the game has ever seen. I don't know that anybody's saying, hey, somebody needs to mind the Edmonton Oilers front office because they've been doing such a bang-up job. Like, when have we heard that happen? And yes, have they been damn close to winning a Stanley Cup? Minutes. Almost. At least 60 minutes away from winning a Stanley Cup.
Got to a Game 7.
So, good on them to get that far. And I've said that in my defense of Vancouver Canucks general managers during their Stanley Cup runs. Like, when you're 60 minutes away from a Stanley Cup, you've had a very good season. That being said, again, they've had obvious holes that should be getting them a trophy sometime this year or next. And those holes didn't get filled. And he's part of that equation. Not the final. I just think this one, of all the names, Matt, this is one of the names that I'm just like, I don't get that. I don't get why he would be a finalist here. And if you're getting interviews, you're a finalist.
Well, not necessarily. If they're doing 15 to 20 Zooms, that's not finalists. That's not the short list. As Drance reported, they're going down to the short list the next 48 hours or so.
Well, semantics. I would say you brainstorm a long list, you interview a medium list, and then you short list from there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know Bill, but I certainly know his dad, Gil. I've known his dad for, 25 years now. He represented a lot of the bigger names in the Canadian Football League as I was starting up my career. Guys like Pinball Clements and Ken Austin. He represented everybody in the CFL at one point. We were talking like team executives, GMs, coaches, as well as a lot of the star players back in the. In fact, his first big client was Dieter Brock. You may remember it was quite a player in the league. Hamilton and Winnipeg.
My favorite player as a kid.
Yeah, one of my favorite is a 5'9" sawed-off quarterback with an absolute rocket for an arm. Could throw the ball through a brick wall. Dieter Brock, back in the day. And he's represented people in the National Hockey League, carved out a niche more with the coaches and the executive side. He doesn't represent his son because there's an ethical
and I'm not slandering Bill. I'm just saying you've got that guy that you think very highly of. Otherwise, you wouldn't have signed him to a very lucrative contract.
Does the owner think highly of him, Blake? That was the report last week. I'll bring you back 7 days ago after the weekend of Rutherford's press conference, where he name-checked Ryan Johnson, but said they will be conducting a more expansive search. And the reporting came out that it was Jim Rutherford's plan, that it was his preference to hire Ryan Johnson as the general manager, and ownership had its own ideas. Either nixed that plan or said, no, let's conduct a broader search and maybe circle back to Ryan Johnson, or for all we know, ownership just absolutely is not ready or willing to turn the franchise over to Ryan Johnson. Because again, Jim Rutherford is in a way hiring his own replacement here. Whoever emerges from this search, and I think, and David Pagnotta joins us later to discuss this further, it is sounding like it is going to be more than one person hired to the Canucks front office here. Now, whether that's immediately or whether that's one now and one at a later date remains to be seen. But it is all but certain that this will be Jim Rutherford's last season with the Vancouver Canucks at age 77 before he heads off into retirement or to another opportunity. And there is not even any certainty that Jim Rutherford is going to be with this organization after the draft, based on his comments a week ago Friday, when that was the only time frame he was willing to commit to. So there's a lot going into this search. It is not your typical search of, president of hockey operations fired his general manager and now needs a new GM for him to mentor. It's a little more complex, a few more moving parts than that.
And I'm not suggesting that they just should have hired Ryan Johnson, the day after the season ended and moved on like that without having an extensive search. You do the extensive search. You dot the I's, you cross the T's. I would just think that if you're hiring the AGM with the AHL experience, your guy is probably ahead of other guys with that same experience. And there's a lot of people in the planet that deserve this job, a lot. I think you can aim a little higher, but
yeah, and that's fair enough. But let's not confuse a lack of name recognition with an inferior candidate.
No, just because you haven't heard.
There were very few people who knew the name Mike Gillis. He ran a boutique player agency. He was not one of the big ones like Newport or CAA with just dozens of clients and all these pseudo junior agents. Sometimes wonder that about the guys who are with the big firms. Like, how much actual personal attention are you getting from these guys who've got these monster client lists? Gillis ran a boutique player agency out of Kingston, Ontario. He had a dozen or so clients in the NHL, and some of them were very big names, needless to say. Pavel Bure at one point, Marcus Naslund at one point, right?
But you also mentioned the Oilers have had tons of management turnover, and he hasn't been promoted to be the guy in any of those times.
Mm-hmm.
He's under their nose.
Mm-hmm. It's a fair question. Mm. It's particularly a fair question when you take a look at Stan Bowman's work recently. I realize Stan Bowman has some Stanley Cup rings from Chicago, and fair play. He earned them. But if Dale Talon doesn't do the spade work and Scotty Bowman isn't there as an advisor, how's Stan Bowman doing as a GM? I don't know.
Yeah.
Of course, that's testament to surrounding yourself with good people, right? And that's also testament to a long rebuild, because that's what Dale Talon, now a Canucks executive, oversaw in Chicago before they were finally ready to take that step and win. But getting back to the Gillis, I remember he was initially, because remember, everyone was reporting he's going to get the job. And people were like, who is this guy? Oh, my God, he was Pavel Bure's agent. He held out Bure. Oh, he was Naslund's agent. Why are we hiring an agent to be a general manager? I mean, that doesn't work. He's got no managerial experience. He walked through the door and revolutionized this franchise and the National Hockey League. So I'm going to do my utmost to keep an open mind on these candidates, and including the ones that are more in the background of NHL front offices that are emerging here. I mean, there's always, every spring, going to be some new names that enter the equation in terms of GM interviews and opportunities to move up in the hockey world. And Bill Scott has had two opportunities now, one with Nashville, one in Vancouver, and we'll see where he falls after all of this. Is there something else we would like to bring up?
No.
Do you think 15 to 20 is you seem a little off put today?
No, 15 to 21.
Is 15 to 20 Zoom interviews, is that an appropriate number for you, Mr. Price?
Yeah, I mean, it's extensive. It's a little longer than I would have expected. Like, I would have thought you could get to, from 10 to 12 down to 5 guys for a second go around. Seems quite widespread. Makes you wonder about the process a little bit. And, again, how many cooks are in the kitchen.
Mm-hmm.
But again, we've criticized them for not having an extensive enough search before, so got to be careful about
the searches before were very much identify a candidate and go out and get them.
Yeah.
There was not a search before they landed on Jim Rutherford, despite the owner saying
people spilled
otherwise.
ink writing about Stan Smeel getting his chance as interim GM, and within hours of
48
that ink drying, he was not
48 hours.
the interim GM anymore.
I mean, the owner just flat lied that day. Oh, a global search. No, he knew he was hiring Jim Rutherford.
Yeah.
And that's the sort of thing that gets you in trouble, right, Francesco? Like, you may not understand it because you don't understand it from the fans' perspective and from the media's perspective. But when you say something like that on a Tuesday and Thursday, it's here's our guy.
Also mean to Stan Smeel, I thought.
Well, people can do the math.
It was dog and pony show for
Stan, like so many other Canucks sports and entertainment employees, have been forced to be the shield for this owner, and that was sadly his turn. But no, it was a targeted hire of Jim Rutherford. It was a targeted, we have a crisis in confidence. Who can we get out there that Canucks fans love? Process that brought him to Trevor Linden. I'm not sure the entire process that brought him to Mike Gillis, but needless to say, that turned out to be a very good hire for the Canucks. So this is really the first time this ownership group, as principal owners, have conducted one of these searches.
Yeah.
Now, shortlist in the next 48 hours, draft lottery next Tuesday. As a timeline, Blake, getting your guy in place a week from today and having him in Toronto on Tuesday or wherever, New Jersey, I guess, Secaucus at the NHL Network studios, to be there for the draft lottery.
Like,
does that strike you as an appropriate timeline?
It's time is of the essence now, and it seemed really easy to say get everything in place by the lottery, a week and a half ago, 2 weeks ago, whatever that was. It's getting a little bit tight now. Not impossible, but it just needs to be a pretty constructive 5 days, I suppose, for them. Ultimately, there's no job to be done on the lottery day, so it's not like they need to be there. They need to be hired, but I think it's reasonable, and it would be a nice. It's not just PR, but it would be a nice way to sell the franchises having their ducks in a row a little bit by having that GM in place. You don't have your GM in place for the draft lottery. You don't have a hockey decision maker face at the draft lottery. It still seems like you're a half-built house, and I think it's nice to project that you are a fully built house in front of the league.
Yeah.
It's a nice to do.
I mean, it's not a need to do. I'm with you. It's not a need to do. It's a nice to do.
But it's a nice to do, and it is doable. So we'll see if they can pull it off. I certainly don't think you force it. Like, if things come up in the next 5 days where it becomes untenable to do that, you certainly don't force it in order to make that happen. But again,
what do you think?
I would also message on that, though, Matt. I like this. This organization is so afraid of.
Well, it's afraid of its shadow.
Yeah, right. So, but on Friday, like, if it becomes abundantly clear to them on Friday, oh shit, we're not going to get this done for the lottery. You know what you do? You send out a press release and saying, hey, the process continues. We had messaged that we'd like to get this done by the lottery, but we want to be more thorough. And
except they haven't messaged that. That's just been the speculation that people.
I thought Jim mentioned that. I thought Jim said that.
Oh, you know what? He may have.
I thought he did.
I will go back to my Rutherford notes.
But again, just clarity. Because you know what? Clarity is good. Again, makes you look like a fully built house. Put out the message.
Yeah, because that's an easy win.
Yes, no one's going to criticize that.
You can't bring transparency to the full process and everybody who is interviewing and how they're doing and the cut down to short lists and all of that. But you can bring transparency to the timeline.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a gesture of goodwill. It's a gesture that we understand the fans count. We understand the fans care. And, of course, we've said all these flowery things about our fans at the end of maybe the most wretched season most of us have ever seen of Canucks hockey, both via messaging to the season ticket members, via our social media channels. Of course, Jim Rutherford opened his press conference a week from Friday and then closed it with all this flowery language about the fans here and that they've supported the team through thick and thin, and especially the thin of this year. So if you mean that, then act on that. Action's greater than words. Sometimes feel like we're parenting the franchise here.
It does feel like that, yeah. It does feel like
there's
that.
There's just so little sort of... The common sense path is not usually lit with this lot, and it's quite frustrating.
Yeah, just don't make life more difficult on yourself.
That's right. Like, there are easy victories that are there for you if you choose to avail yourself of them.
I've never been a PR officer, but I do wonder why certain outfits make certain decisions and don't make certain decisions and say things one way and then not the other. I don't get it. Maybe when you're in that moment, you've got owners breathing down your neck, you make different decisions, but my goodness.
So typically what it is that somebody in a position of authority wants to do it a different way, and they don't have the sort of culture where the underlings can say, okay, I hear you, boss, but what about this? And have a constructive sort of exchange of ideas. It's usually because it's ham-handed, top-down sort of governance of an organization. There's been tombs written on this, particularly in business school. So I'm just... Rutherford talked about narrowing it down to 3 to 5 names and that he wants ownership in that. But he also said it was his call on the new GM, and I think that's changed as well, right? It's Francesco's call. I don't see anything specific here to a timeline of the draft lottery, namely just about the draft, which, of course, stands to reason you want the new GM in the draft. Anyways, what's up with Yellow Dog?
Well, there's a new beer release coming tomorrow, folks. And this is, hey, hockey fans, pay attention. Yellow Dog Brewing, our buddies, are releasing Brock's beer. That Brock. Yeah. It's a West Coast Pilsner built for crisp passes and clean finishes, brewed in collaboration with Mr. Besser himself. This collab brings together Yellow Dog Brewing's hop expertise with a smooth modern edge. Bright, snappy, refreshingly dialed in with a subtle hop bite and perfectly dry finish. Easygoing but confident. It's the kind of beer that shows up ready to play, and it's a great collab. Brock Besser loves him some dogs. We know that. Got all the feels for his dogs. And he's partnering up now with Yellow Dog Brewing. Very cool.
We'll keep it yellow here. The Nashville Predators make the big first signing of the NHL offseason. It is forward Vitaly Pinchuk from the KHL in Russia on a one-year entry-level contract. Now, NHL CBA rules mandate he sign that. Remember, Andrei Kuzmenko had to do the same thing a few years ago when he was the belle of the ball in terms of European free agents and ultimately chose the Vancouver Canucks. Pinchuk was 66 points and 31 goals, a better than point per game player in the KHL last year. Coveted free agent, alas, with no practice facility for the Canucks, the high taxes of British Columbia, drama aplenty with this organization, and no certainty on the head coach or the general manager. The Canucks were not in a particularly great place to recruit this player or any player right now, and I think that was also reflected in college free agents where, okay, they got Shymick, and he did very well in Abbotsford, but there were a number of players, including a number with BC ties, either from here or played in the BCHL, who signed elsewhere.
Yeah, it's too bad, but, you know, this kid's got the pick of the litter, basically, right? So he chooses, I think, an interesting team, the team that could be playoff bound next year. but they're also not so amazing that they have roles wrapped up that he can't win a role. So it's an interesting decision. The culture around the Preds and around Nashville probably doesn't hurt for a guy coming over from the KHL as well. So got that going in his favor as well. Not to mention tax-free state practice facility and all the bells and whistles.
Yep. Yeah, I think that's the case. A couple of Russian players there as well in the Nashville organization. So not surprised. No. These European free agents typically want to build their NHL foundation, be an NHL player off the hop, not necessarily have to deal with a ton of competition in training camps so they can get that leg up and that head start into their first season. And then, as Andrei Kuzmenko did so beautifully, right, have some success and then turn that into a multi-year contract at big money. And I still think if Pettersson is here, come free agency, I still think they should be looking at Kuzmenko, Blake. They had chemistry. He had great chemistry with Elias Pettersson. They both.
He's a total free agent?
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah, I would look at it for sure. I mean, if he's going to take a show-me contract, why not do it with the Vancouver Canucks?
Yeah, because, free agent to be. Kuzmenko played at $4.3 million this year, 30 years old now. Yeah, because the chemistry he had with Pettersson. Okay, playoffs, Stanley Cup playoffs. Anaheim, first of all, I'm quite surprised with Anaheim, and I'm quite pleased, actually, with Anaheim, because having watched them against the Canucks this year, and of course, the Canucks had their success against the Ducks this year. I tended a loss against Anaheim, but they got multiple victories over Anaheim this year. Fun team, teaming with young offensive talent. Love watching some of those kids play. But given the style they played, Blake, I didn't think this was the team that had sort of was poised for Stanley Cup playoff success, played that sort of playoff style that was going to get them through a two-time reigning, defending Western Conference champion. So I was thinking...
They've got some personality, though.
I looked at the West and I went, oh, God, I don't give the two Southern California teams much of a chance. Well, good on them. They've got a 3-1 series lead against the Oilers, one victory away from knocking the Western champs out. Ryan Poehling scores in overtime for the win last night. Some controversy, particularly if you're in the Alberta capital.
I think the controversy is waning now as the
I would hope so.
As the beers wear off.
Right. We see a lot of that when the Canucks are in the playoffs, people screaming bloody murder on things that wind up being non-starters. It is ruled a goal on the ice. It goes to review. You can't see the whole puck clearly over the line. But who are we kidding here? I like what Down Goes Brown had to say about this, tweeting, "This is such a weird controversy. The puck is in. The look is conclusive. You don't have to see the whole puck. That would be ridiculous. We all know the shape a puck is. This one is over the line. I hate replay more than just about anyone, but it worked perfectly here. I think it's spot on."
The only thing that has any relevance in the other direction is the fact that, and here's a look at somebody who applied some AI technology to further prove that it was in, is that the NHL has not used common sense as a rule to determine these things in the past, almost exclusively. When there's a puck underneath a goaltender's pad.
But when the puck is completely obscured, Blake, I get it.
Yeah.
Because of the size of that glove or hand. In this case, you see, 7/8 of the puck? Like, there's not a lot of guessing here.
But first of all, that's not a rule. Like, the common sense thing is not part of the rule.
Right.
And nor is you have to see the entirety of the scoring instrument. That is not a rule. And for the sake of last night's goal, the most important thing is, of course, you need evidence to overturn the original call on the ice. It was
that's
goal on the ice. The people
and that's what the Oilers fans are upset about, that how can he call it a goal on the ice when he can't see it fully cross the line?
They don't need to prove that. They need to prove that it didn't cross the line. And they don't
But they're saying, how can the officials determine that that's a good goal when nobody saw it fully cross the line? That basically they're saying the referees, the linesmen, they all projected that the puck was in, but didn't know for sure, and so it was an incorrect call off the hop, and they should have been in a world.
But how do we know what they saw? There's 4 different sets of eyes on there. We don't know what they saw with their own bare eyes. But
because even the video, nobody actually sees it fully across the line.
2 different calls. So the call on the ice before they go to video is goal.
Mm-hmm.
You need to disprove that.
That's right.
So you need to show that it's on the line. That video does not show that it's on the line.
Mm-hmm.
You can't disprove it then. So it's the goal on the ice then stands. It's a goal. Unless you have proof of the puck sitting on the line.
If it had been ruled no goal, where do you come down on it? There's 2 different ways of looking at it. If it gets called no goal, you'd be like, okay, what are we doing here? We want to get the call right. And that would piss me off because we all know that it's in the net. If it's called no goal, though, I'll be like, it's over the line. It's not in the net.
They would have been consistent with, I think, the way they have called it for much of their history, which is we like to see the space, right? We often have heard that. We like to see the space.
Yep, daylight.
Yeah. The whiteness.
Between the puck and the red line.
Which, again, is dangerous because it is not a definitive. Like, just looking at the picture,
well, Blake,
it's not a definitively laser-perfect line.
The way, and you're telling me that technology can't help us out here, like there's got to be a world.
Yeah.
But what you've just described, Blake, is a lot of the imprecision around hockey and the National Hockey League that I think people get frustrated with and makes the league look Mickey Mouse in comparison to some of the other leagues. Now, look, it's an imprecise game. There are going to be gray areas. We all have to understand that. Nuance is the thing. The whole world is not black and white. And the more you understand gray, typically the more intelligent you are. But the whole notion of we absolutely have to see daylight breaks down in fallacy when you see this.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So, that makes me ask the question, why was that ever a thing? Like, if you can surmise, as you can, bring the photo back up, Mike, if you don't mind. If you can surmise with common sense, like just looking at that puck and where it's situated in the white paint, or in the white as opposed to the red paint, it's clear as day that full cylinder is over the red line.
Many people have doctored the puck to a teardrop design to accommodate for the Oilers fans.
Yes. Teardrop or oil drop or
yes,
both.
Yes,
it's synonymous now.
Yes, it would need to be an oil drop in order for it to still be on the line.
Yeah. We had been saying the less said about Colorado and LA, the better. Except it's the Avs and a clean sweep here. And now it's over, and the recriminations start for Vernon, British Columbia's Ken Holland and the Los Angeles Kings that have lost in the first round 5 consecutive times. Here's Arash Marchese out of Los Angeles, who's been a longstanding reporter there, who tweeted, the Kings won the Stanley Cup in 2014, capping an incredible run of 2 titles and 3 conference finals appearances in 3 years. That was 2014. They won their last cup. Over the next 12 years, they have not won a single playoff series. Something has to change. I think that's probably fair. And of course, things would be changing now in the post-Anze Kopitar world because he has now concluded his National Hockey League career before he heads straight to the Hockey Hall of Fame, the greatest Slovenian player ever, 2 Stanley Cup championships, 2 Selke trophies, the Kings' all-time leading scorer with more than 1,400 career points.
But didn't get out of the first round past the Stanley Cup in 2014.
12 years.
Like, yeah.
And honestly, Sydney could be looking at the same thing. I mean, it's 8 years. I'm not sure if Sydney would go 4 more years, but it's 8 going on 9 years here for Sydney.
Which is it's equally shocking though for Kopitar because again, this is a top line center that plays both ends of the rink. Like he instantaneously makes a third of the game in your favor. Right? Like if Andrei Kopitar is on the ice for that third of the game, you are probably the superior team.
Yep. Because he's such a good two-way player.
Yeah.
So something has to change in LA. Ken Holland is an older school general manager. Can I interest you in Elias Pettersson to fill that center gap you have with Kopitar's retirement, Ken Holland? Can I interest you in Jake DeBrusk? Because you just need goals. And you've needed goals for an awfully long time. Pettersson and DeBrusk as fits in Los Angeles. Blake, talk to me.
Yeah, it's possible. It's absolutely possible. Are they ready to give up on Quentin Byfield?
Well, no, but in addition to,
you think like they've already spent some money here on the likes of Panarin as well. Remember, so
right. They got Kopitar coming off the books. The cap is going up.
Yeah, Kopitar's only 7 on the books. So it's still almost a $5 million surplus.
What do they have? They got 85 on the books next year, so they got room.
Yeah.
Now, ton of free agents. I will give you that. You're replacing a lot of players there because Kuzmenko, Lawton, Matthew Joseph, UFA.
But if you're not asking for Byfield back, who are you asking for back?
Oh, well, I mean, we're well past Byfield, Blake. I mean, Pettersson's not returning you Byfield. Come on. Yeah, that was a long shot to begin with.
Like Samuel Hellenius is not tickling my fancy.
Well, Blake, stop thinking about it in terms of player return for the Vancouver Canucks. Start thinking about it in terms of cap space gained and prospects and draft capital gained. I think that's the move you're making now for Elias Pettersson. Yeah, you're probably going to have to take some money back because teams don't want to eat 11-6.
If it happens to happen before the draft, they've got not only their first-round pick, which isn't going to be a terrible first-round pick now.
No, it's 17th overall. They're locked in because they were the worst team in the playoffs. So they'll have the first pick.
That's a decent first-round pick, and they have 3 second-round picks. So they could peel off one of their 3 second-round picks and still have a robust draft. A first and a second, and they'd still have 2 second-rounders to make them feel better.
Yeah, well, and the other thing is like Kenny, I think, is making courage of his conviction trades these days, right?
Yeah.
That's a GM you want to deal with. A lot of GMs wanted to deal with Jim Benning when Benning was pulling that off. And the other thing, and I missed this back around exit interview days, but there was a report in The Athletic that DeBrusk is likely going to only be willing to be dealt to the Western Conference. So I was surprised to read that more recently. I missed that last week, a couple weeks ago. Anyways, and we know, of course, based on his answers here, that DeBrusk would kind of like to get to a team that's more competitive than the Canucks. Boston, we have got to talk about Boston. Please try and stifle your glee. But in his last 16 playoff games, goaltender Jeremy Swayman is rocking a .924 save percentage. That's extraordinary. The Bruins are 7-9 in those games.
Yeah.
They just can't score goals.com. He gave his teammates an earful on the bench yesterday as he was pulled. Head coach Marco Sturm, defenseman Charlie McAvoy called the 6-1 loss to Buffalo embarrassing. Bruins 1 loss away from elimination on that side of the bracket in the East.
They are behaving the way that, a team that was projected to be sort of the 9th or 10th best team in the Eastern Conference. They had a better regular season, I think, than most people anticipated, but not by wild margins.
They're still the wild card. Yeah. Wild card 1. I mean,
that's a middling team.
Yep.
And they're taking on the hottest, or one of the top 4 hottest teams in the second half of the season. This is if they lost in 5, that would track.
Yeah.
It would not blow me away.
Montreal Tampa tied 2 apiece after the Lightning come back from 2-0 down yesterday. Win it in the turd, as Burr would say, at the Bell Center against the Habs. There's your playoff bracket. The Avs are through. The Hurricanes are through. So the top seeds in both conferences, and we await the rest.
Didn't love that. They didn't score on the power play, but I think that momentum was gained. I don't know what they call it, a cross-check on Kucherov. I thought Kucherov went down easy to try to create, and then I think Kucherov injured himself by going down into the boards, I think. And late in that game, I think that even though they didn't score on that power play, I thought they started to tilt the ice, and then they scored a few minutes later.
The Nation Network is your all-access pass to the playoffs, shows, stats, fantasy insights, live social updates. If it's happening, we've got it. Every goal hit, every moment broken down for you. One network, every moment. I can tune into the DFO Rundown, the sheet with Jeff Merrick daily on the Stanley Cup playoffs. We'll be chit-chatting about it as well. Vancouver Goldeneyes defeat Minnesota 4-3 in overtime in the final game of their inaugural PWHL season, and in so doing, they've secured the top pick in the 2026 PWHL draft via the Gold Plan. What is the Gold Plan, you ask? As soon as your team is mathematically eliminated from the postseason, you begin accumulating points for wins or overtime and shootout losses, and Vancouver accumulated more points than the Seattle Torrents after being eliminated, so they have the right to select defender Caroline Harvey, who has been called the finest prospect in PWHL history. It's not a long history, but she is quite a player, an American Olympian, a gold medalist, an MVP of the Milan Games. She won the Patty Kazmir Award as the top player in NCAA hockey this year with the Wisconsin Badgers. A 23-year-old from New Hampshire who graduates next month. She'll be drafted in June. Kyle Cushman, who covers the PWHL for the Score, writes, some have debated the first overall pick because Kara Gardner-Murray was on with us last week, and she's saying she knew Caroline Harvey is a great, but she mentions there's a couple other very good players in the draft as well. Well, Cushman says, to me, there is zero question that Harvey is the top prospect. When she retires, she'll go down as the best defender in women's hockey history. Wow. That's some statement. Lots of great prospects, but she's generational. She should be headed to Vancouver. So there you go. One down, one to go. We're looking at 2 first overall picks for the 2 professional Vancouver hockey clubs this June.
And for those that are saying the golden rule, the golden plan, pardon me, is the way to go. And people floated it for the NHL. I will caution this. I like it. I like it particularly in the PWHL, where there's not an ocean of prospects in women's hockey yet from which to draw on, and that whole ecosystem. In the NHL, though, what does a team missing the playoffs want out of its? What does a fan base want out of its squad in the final third of a season that is lost? What does every fan base in that position say? Play the kids. Right? They want to see the future. And what you'd see if you had a gold plan is you'd have teams hang on to veterans at the trade deadline. You'd stop seeing players traded at the trade deadline for draft picks, and you'd stop seeing teams bringing up their kids to get valuable experience at the tail end of the season because they'd want to dress to win the game. And we know coaches, when they are tasked with winning a game because it matters, they will do everything they can, and they will side with veterans, and you won't see the kids play.
Goldeneyes are doing their media availability as we speak, or just wrapped up, and Kara Gardner-Murray said, quote, it's very exciting to have the first pick, and that includes the first pick each round. I think there's a lot of great talent in that class. There's a lot of good players that are going to come from out there. So did not commit to Caroline Harvey, best that I can tell from just scanning the coverage of this year-end presser from the Goldeneyes brass. But needless to say, unless Caroline Harvey says, I don't want to play there, I think we're going to be looking at this
American player
prodigious
playing north
talent.
of the border. What could go wrong?
Exactly.
Oh, man.
All right. Okay, let's get to today's menu. It's brought to you by our friends at Greta. And as you may already know, our friends at Conversation, David Quadrelli, Harmon Dial, and special guests will be doing a live on-location stream of the 2026 Draft Lottery on Tuesday, May 5th from Greta. They'll be breaking down the Draft Lottery in real time, live reactions, giveaways, everything you need as the future of Vancouver hockey starts to take shape. You can stream the event live on YouTube, or better yet, you can attend. Head on down to Greta Bar, YVR, 50 West Cordova. Don't miss it. Join the conversation live with Quads, Harmon Dial, and company. And we will be doing a show after the Draft Lottery that night as well, a week from Tuesday. We could do the show in the morning, but it's all about the events later that afternoon or that night. So we'll be talking to David Pagnotta here on the Vancouver Canucks GM search, and he gets into it and some of the candidates, but also the juxtaposition with what the Leafs and the Predators are doing. Those are other vacancies right now. Then Dave Hall of Canucks Army and the Blackfish Prospect Show Wednesday on the Canucks Army YouTube channel. You want to check that out with Dave and Tyson Cole. He stops by, plenty of prospecting with him. We talk about the Pinchuk signing in Nashville. We talk about Gavin McKenna going to the World Championships. Temperature check, progress report on Braden Cootes, who's still involved in the WHL playoffs. Also get into a prospect that we like their lot casting forward here next season in the Canucks realm. And Kirill Kudryavtsev and the Vancouver Giants' Mathis Preston all feature in that conversation with Dave. Later in the program, just another thorough victory for Vancouver Whitecaps FC. I mean, they're starting to remind me of the 2011 Canucks. Well, they are just a machine. They just go through teams. If you don't bring your best, you got no chance of beating this squad. And if they, the rare nights when they take a step back, they're still able to win. When they play closer to the best, they're just resounding victories right now for the Caps.
I saw people having that debate. What is the most dominant Vancouver sports team ever? And it's the 2011 Canucks or this group of Whitecaps.
Wally had a team or two with the Lions that was pretty dominant, but the way this club is going right now, I mean, it is almost guaranteed win night at BC Place. The problem is now it's 8 straight away from BC Place. We'll talk about that heartbreaking Warriors loss on Friday. They're out of the NLL playoffs, Seahawks draft, some baseball, including the weekend that was at the Nat, plus the M's coming off a sweep. All that coming up on the program here today. Time now for our Bet365 bets of the day. I think we're in the same sort of headspace here, partner.
We are. Two different ways to attack it.
Right. My thinking is if Sydney's going down, he's going down fighting. Captain Canada is plus 175 as an anytime goal scorer in Game 5 on home ice tonight versus Philadelphia. Of course, the Flyers are up 3-1 in that series. They had a chance to polish off the Pens in Game 4. Pittsburgh played its best game of the series. Crosby talked about how we're starting to figure some things out with regards to the Flyers and that suffocating Rick Tocchet defense. But give me Sid to score tonight at plus 175.
All the same theories, but I get the insurance of points. I'm going 2 points for Crosby at plus 155, just because if the suffocation gets so focused on Crosby, because Rick Tocchet knows full well that Sydney's going to be damn motivated tonight. If he's too shadowed to actually get shots away, we know that his creativity in distributing the puck might be needed
but
instead.
Blake, they're going to have to score twice for your bet to come. You say the insurance. I only need one Penguins goal.
That's true.
You need two.
That's true.
Every sports fan will tell you, and this is an appropriate read for this series, that not all games are created equal. Sometimes the excitement just isn't there. Sometimes you get a dud. It happens. Happens a lot in the Commonwealth.
This would also necessitate a 3-goal lead, though.
But at Bet365, boring games are a thing of the past. Now there's always a reason to tune in, even if the score isn't one of them. And while they can't make every game exciting, they can help fans get excited about every game. Bet365. Download the app today. Must be 19 or older. Please play responsibly. David Pagnotta, next. So Carson Price from the historic Wall Center. Canucks GM search really cranking up this week. Joining us now to discuss, the editor-in-chief of the Fourth Period, the DFO Insider, which you can watch here on the Nation Network with Irf Gaffar weekdays or Wednesdays here on the Nation Network. It's Mr. David Pagnotta. How are you?
I'm good, boys. I just wrapped up a weekend in Montreal covering Game 3 and 4 of that wild, crazy series, and I'm going to continue to bounce around here as the week moves along.
I heard that city is sizzling right now. Like they're as invested as they always are.
Yes, yeah. The atmosphere at the Bell Center and just outside the Bell Center is insanity. It is absolutely wild. It was crazier Friday night after they won than yesterday when they lost. No OT last night. Finally in that series, it gets done in the first 60. But there's a vibe to the city right now, and it might also be, part of the fact that it's nice outside. It's like 20 degrees.
I was just going to say, like, you don't have to go far in Montreal to find insanity. Like, if you're talking about a lovely Friday evening temperature-wise, that city sort of goes off that the Habs are in the playoffs. Yeah. Wow. Only compounds matters. Yeah. We miss insanity here, David. Actually, we miss postseason playoff on the streets of Vancouver insanity. We've dealt with a lot of insanity inside Rogers Arena, sadly. It sounds like there is a whole lot of candidates here now for this Canucks open GM job, but it may be beyond just an open GM job. Please explain, sir.
Yeah. So, it certainly sounds like there will be a transitional period with Jim Rutherford eventually, presumably retiring. I think there's 1 year left on that contract with a pretty nice price tag to it. So he's going to stick around for at least that period. But as he's going through this GM search process, it sounds like we may see multiple additions to the front office itself. Whether that's an executive vice president added along with a GM or something along those lines, it wouldn't shock me if they go in that direction. Starting to hear that maybe Toronto is doing something similar with their multiple or with their search. We could see multiple changes and additions to their front office staff as well. Sounds like Vancouver might be following in a similar model, or at least there's some thought process behind doing something along those lines. Now, I believe around 20 candidates have been interviewed, at least in the first process, which kind of aligns also with Toronto. I think they were in and around 20 people as well before they started to narrow down their list and get through phase 2 and phase 3. It sounds like Vancouver is in the next wave of their search. And we're hearing more names, starting to pop up. But it also sounds like there's the possibility that we may see multiple individuals added to the staff. And I'm curious to see if there are further changes that come along with that.
And do we know who's on the Canucks side of these Zoom calls?
Jim Rutherford initiated them. I believe when you get to the next process, then it's going to – when you start to narrow it down, I would imagine Francesco Aquilini will be entering that mix as well.
Interesting.
Bill Scott's name has come up here. He's now a candidate and assistant general manager with the Edmonton Oilers. What can you tell us about Bill Scott?
Yeah, he was also on Nashville's radar as well for their vacancy at the GM post. There's experience there, certainly. And we're seeing a number of different individuals at the executive level, front office level, that have been around for some time that are now starting to, enter into the equation for some teams as general manager, which means, we're starting to see another way or a new wave, of new GMs kind of entering the mix. Jamie Langenbrunner is another experienced individual who's gone through different motions of the front office within hockey ops. He's an AGM in Boston. I believe he's one of the individuals that have spoken with the Canucks or interviewed with the Canucks in that first wave. I'm not sure if he's moved along, but Scott kind of similar there. Scott White, another individual who has a lot of experience, has gained a lot of experience throughout different levels of management. He's somebody that was on Nashville's radar, has been, it seems like, one of the finalists for the Toronto position. Just as an example for some of the new guys that are going to start coming in and making their marks. Scott's one of them. I believe Langenbrunner as well. We're hearing, Ray Whitney's name pop up as well. There's a connection there with Jim Rutherford. Obviously, we know about Shane Doan entering the mix. Kevin Adams, I believe Marc Bergevin has expressed his interest to the team. I'm not sure if he's interviewed, but I know there's been some or he's made it known that, hey, if you want to talk, I'm here. He's an AGM right now with the Buffalo Sabres, and other candidates as well that are starting to kind of enter the mix. I believe there was a discussion with Ryan Martin with New York Rangers, and he was somebody that was also involved with the Toronto search as well.
That's a robust list.
Yeah,
and
these
that's
are wild
not even
lists.
a habit. I mean, like, there's probably more names that are.
I know you said Toronto did this too, but like, are both of these teams like going wider than the norm? Do you think?
Yeah, I because of, and I think it's because you're looking at experience at the GM post itself, but also experience throughout management. And a lot of these candidates or potential candidates, a lot of these executives have gone through different stages of management. They've explored the scouting departments. They've or the departments in terms of what that experience is like. They've gone through different elements of front office, player personnel, different tasks with respect to negotiations and things like that. You're seeing a lot of these candidates gain experience year after year after year, and that have been in front office positions for 5, 10, 12 plus years. And you're starting to see them making a bit of a mark here. And I think the reason why you want to cast that net is because you want to start to see, are there new ideas that can be implemented? Toronto, Keith Pelly, the president of MLSE, really put a big spotlight on, data centric and the analytics part of it. Well, a lot of these individuals that are new or fresher names, they've incorporated and had experience within marrying the analytical part of the game with the hockey part, the eye test. And with this kind of wave going along throughout the National Hockey League in this regard, you're seeing more teams want to have at least a conversation, because maybe those ideas start to click with what you're searching for and the direction this team is going. With the rebuild happening in Vancouver and more roster changes expected, how are these individuals going to be able to reinforce this rebuild and make these potential additional changes to the roster so that this team can be successful down the road? This isn't just a rebuild for a few years. You're not bringing in a new GM to come in here just to take the reins for 3-4 seasons. This is an individual that you would anticipate coming in and being responsible for the next 7 to 10 years of this organization at least.
We've assumed the lottery is sort of the target date. The speed of this, that's a lot of names to churn through in basically a week and a half so far. That still seems to track, doesn't it? To have something done in another week and a half?
Yeah, I think you're starting to, like, Nashville's getting closer. And once they make, their decision, I'm sure Toronto's going to follow suit shortly after. Toronto indicated that they were looking at middle of May as their target point, best case scenario, to find an individual. It sounds like that's sped up. But there were reports that, hey, maybe at the end of last week, we'd start to hear something. I think with what Toronto was looking to do by making multiple changes, by bringing in other people within the staff, that's why we're hearing Matt Sundin's name with respect to them, in addition to whoever, whether it's John Chaika or Scott White or, somebody else, or a combination of these individuals. That's kind of sped things up a little bit from their side of things. But at the same time, they're trying to round out that new front office look for this club. And I've got to imagine that Vancouver wants to do that as well. Remember, like when New Jersey made their change and let go of Tom Fitzgerald, they zeroed in on a few candidates, and Sonny Mehta was their guy basically right in the middle of that interview, and they locked him in. Sometimes it works that quickly. Other times you want to make sure you're casting that wide net to go through a thorough search. And I think with the direction the Canucks are going in, and with all the hoopla over the last couple of years surrounding that organization, you've got to make sure your due diligence is crisp and you're finding the right person or persons to come in and take the reins in this rebuild.
Ryan Bowness is another name you guys talked about last week on DFO Insider. Yeah. Outside of being Rick's son, we all know that. Tell us a little bit more about Ryan Bowness.
Yeah, so an AGM now with the New York Islanders, was with the Sens before. This is another individual that's gone through, same like everybody else that I just explained, gone through multiple steps of front office and of management. This is somebody that's worked with, the different scouting departments, the different player development departments, and an eye for talent. He was a scout as well. So again, another individual part of this next wave. He spoke, I believe he was one of the 20 odd or so that interviewed with Toronto as well. And this is another guy that, there's experience throughout. And that's, again, what the Canucks are looking for. Again, it doesn't have to necessarily be, a GM like an Adams or Fitzgerald or whomever that's been there at that position for a long time. This is about understanding the overall makeup of an organization and then incorporating the new age element of how you're building squads.
Ray Whitney. Tell us about Ray Whitney's journey, because we were talking about him last week and noted that he was a finalist for the Sharks job that went to Mike Greer. But beyond that, it was
that close already, and yet the resume is not exceedingly long for him.
Tell us about Ray Whitney's journey through hockey executivedom.
Yeah, so he, yes, he was a finalist in San Jose before they made their choice in bringing Greer on board. But he also worked at the NHL level, at the executive level within the NHL offices, following a similar path to an extent to Brendan Shanahan a number of years ago. Now, Shanny eventually was part of player safety and, went that route before joining the Maple Leafs. But, the league is, as they pinpoint certain individuals that have played the game that have, the makeup to what they view as the makeup to excel at the executive level within the league, whether that's running a team or at the NHL offices. So he's gained experience on the business side of things, along with hockey ops from the NHL department, and then started to, put his hat in the ring for some of the GM vacancies that were out there, San Jose being one. And then it kind of just dialed off a little bit. He's still been involved with the game, but hasn't had that big spotlight on him, too much. There were a lot of different individuals, Scott Mellenby, being one. He's an advisor right now with with St. Louis, but spent a number of years as an AGM. He was in Montreal as well, and then kind of rejoined. He took a little bit of a break and then rejoined the NHL ranks with St. Louis. Whitney's kind of in that break period right now, in terms of being fully invested day to day, but is still somebody that a lot of people around the league view as one of those guys that eventually will hit the ranks at the executive level in the NHL based on his experience off the ice as well as on it. And of course, that experience on it ties him quite nicely to Jim Rutherford as well.
Does he have the experience on his own, or does it need to be tied with Shane Doan as we have heard intimated?
Yeah, I mean, and this is where the multi faceted kind of approach may click here for the Vancouver Canucks. Again, similar to what's happening in Toronto by making multiple, what I believe will be multiple additions to their front office. If Vancouver goes in that direction, that's kind of where that kind of clicks, because those relationships, those become pretty valuable when you're building a team. Somebody that you can click with immediately and that follows a similar philosophy on how this is going to run. Regardless of title, if you can have that cohesiveness, it makes that process a lot easier, not necessarily seamless, but at least it makes it easier with everybody on the same page.
Yeah, when David cites Whitney having history with Jim Rutherford, of course, in Carolina, where he was a player and then served as an executive for a number of years with the Hurricanes. Answer me this. Is Bill Scott, who we talked about earlier, the Edmonton AGM, is he still a candidate in Nashville, to the best of your knowledge?
I do not believe so. No.
Okay.
I could be wrong, but I'm not sure if he's one of those, because I believe Nashville's going through their final rounds right now, or just were. So I don't know if he's one of the finalists on that front, to be perfectly honest.
Okay. No, I just wondered because he would be the first candidate with options potentially with Vancouver that we know of, confirmed candidate that we know of. And yes. And you also said Nashville's getting close. Like, do you think we'll see a new GM in Nashville this week?
I think the goal for them was to get something locked in by the end of this month. So we're there now. I thought maybe last week was a little more realistic for them. clearly it's taken a little bit more time, but I think the end of the month was kind of the timeline, which might have aligned with Toronto to say, okay, get that stuff out of the way, because they seem to be going in a totally different direction. I think Tom Fitzgerald, when he was let go, Nashville said, okay, we got to kind of pounce on this. He kind of raised the eyebrows of Barry Trotz and company over there. And I believe he's gone through the first two rounds anyway. And he met last week in person with the organization. So, that might be one of the finalists that are in the running for that position.
Yeah. Of course, that seems to be the pathway that a lot of teams like, the initial interview with just somebody from hockey ops, and then you bring in people from ownership. I can only imagine how intimidating that is. Of course, in Nashville, it's a little more intimidating because you've got
Saban in the mix.
Saban in the room. Coach Saban, who just seethes intensity even at rest.
And has opinions.
And knows the thing about winning or two as well. Marvelous stuff, David. Go ahead.
And just to add with Nashville, I mean, it's, they added Pinchuk today, signing him to a 1-year entry-level contract. And he was a sought-after kid in the KHL that a lot of teams were kind of gunning for. So you're already, you're giving this new GM a little bit of added ammunition here with some young talent that presumably will be on the team next year.
Yeah, and signing players without a GM.
Yeah. Well done, Nashville. Well done, Nashville. Marvelous stuff, David. Thank you for the update. We appreciate this. We'll call on you soon.
Sounds good. See you, boys.
Sekeres Price from the historic Wall Center.
This segment brought to you by your Pacific Toyota dealers, the Toyota Prius plug-in hybrid. You're wondering if you're still allowed to buy a sports car at your age? Have your cake and eat it too. You get a Prius hybrid. Performs like a sports car, looks like a sports car now.
We're driving up to Squamish today to play golf with our buddy Al Chris Manson of the Whistler Golf Club, and I am going to set the over-under at 2.5. How many Toyota Prius plug-in hybrids are we going to see on the drive up?
Yeah, I think that's. I'll take. I
see them everywhere now.
I'll take the over. It's that much fun to drive. It has room for golf clubs, so you could have used one to get up to Squamish if you had one. Right now, red tag days are on until May. Take advantage, folks. ShopToyota.ca.
Here's Dave Hall, prospects writer par excellence for Canucks Army, and with Tyson Cole, the host of the Blackfish Prospect Show every Wednesday here on the Nation Network. We had Tyson on a couple of weeks. Dave, congratulations on the start of the new show. Perfectly timed, sir.
Yeah, I really appreciate it. It's been a blast so far. We've got 3 episodes down, and it is great timing. Obviously the Canucks are about to embark on potentially the most important draft they've ever had, so it's good timing. Not so much for Canucks centric news, but we've been diving a lot into the draft, so it's been a lot of fun. I come on shows like this all the time and ramble and go way too long, so it's nice to have my own platform to ramble on. So.
You can ramble here anytime you want.
Absolutely. You can be Robert Plant on this show with your ramble, Dave. We'll take you. Last time there was a hugely ballyhooed Russian free agent. Everybody's got to get this guy out of the KHL. Of course, it was Andrei Kuzmenko, and he chose Vancouver. Alas, Vitaly Pinchuk has chosen the Nashville Predators here today. What are the Canucks missing out on this guy? And did you hear them connected to him at all? Like, were they even in the sweepstakes?
Yeah, I've heard, as they should. I believe they, touched base and checked in. But, at this point, we saw this with the NCAA crop as well. It just doesn't seem to be the most favorable environment, which is a shame because obviously there's spots, there is opportunity within this system. So it is a shame, but it sounds like, I heard they did touch base, but they weren't relatively close. I was a little shocked to hear that Nashville ended up being, the finishing line. I heard, I heard pretty much every team touch base as they typically do with a top free agent like this, but Nashville wasn't really on my radar as one of the top teams. So to hear, according to Elliot Friedman this morning, it was not only Nashville, but Nashville and LA. There were some other teams that I heard definitely were in the mix, but regardless, probably probably this year's top free agent for sure. Great size for one. Like the first thing that jumps off the page is just his size. He's also got really nice hands and tight. I did a lot of tape on him a couple months ago as I was getting prepped for all these free agents, and some of his goal highlights, especially in tight, are just really, really impressive. Couple things that I do worry, in the sense of him progressing to North America, and I wonder if it'll take some time, is just his feet. He doesn't move. He's not the most mobile player out there, but you kind of take that with the 6'4" frame. Not only that, he's a guy that I wouldn't even mind seeing him use his physicality a little bit more. Really good hands and tight. Like he can make defenders look silly. But I think he could probably use his size a little bit better along the boards and just getting to those spots. But overall, a really fun, 24-year-old free agent. So Nashville got, at least a good look, and it's something that, we over here in Vancouver definitely wish we could have that kind of prospect on the horizon. But
when you hear Vancouver not a destination for the Pinchucks or the NCAA crowd, Dave, is that lack of practice facility, or is all the drama and dysfunction also catching up with them?
I mean, I think it's a little bit of both. I mean, Canucks have, they have had some free agents in the past, and, they've done a relatively good job at, grabbing a few every year. And so these guys talk, and, we've heard from NHLers themselves say that, people ask around. And when it comes to things like the practice facility, how's the setup over there? It's definitely going to be something that they take in consideration. But for me, this is sort of me just speculating, but I have to imagine all the drama and all the pressure that comes with all of that has to have something to do with it. With that said, though, like I said earlier, like Vancouver does have opportunities. So if you're looking for, somewhere to sink your teeth in and, cut your teeth and get a top 9 role, Vancouver does seem like a pretty good destination. But at the end of the day, perhaps all this drama and no one knows who's scouting next year, and no one knows who's in charge next year. No one even knows who's coaching. So there's just, we heard, quote unquote, a lack of plan. And I think that probably shows itself quite well just by saying all those things, right? There's no one knows what's going on.
There's a few other Euro prospects too, not prospects. There's a few Euro free agents. I mean, it's not, that door's not closed. It's just not the bell of the ball in Pinchuk, but they still might be able to add a 23 to 25-year-old Euro free agent, right?
Yeah, for sure. There's, I put out a list in Canucks Army a couple of weeks ago now, but most of them seem to be from the KHL this year. There is one other player that actually is signed through next year, but I do wonder if they can get his rights. I can't off the top of my head remember his name because I'm going to absolutely butcher it. But he's actually someone. I'm not even going to be able to do it right now. But he's a guy that I actually had after the show. I'll make sure to get his name and bring it forward. But there's a couple guys from the KHL that are definitely intriguing. So it's not over, but at this point, it doesn't look very promising.
Speaking of Euro vacations, Canucks scouts might be over to look at the Worlds because Gavin McKenna is going there with Team Canada. What do you think that does to show that he's ready for the National Hockey League?
Well, it's either going to make or break. That's always the funny thing about these tournaments. Even the U18s, it's one of those things where everyone wants to make sure that they're representing their country, but at the same time, this late in the season, it's a good opportunity to kind of drop your stock a little bit if you don't perform. I don't think Gavin has to worry about that. I think it's a nice touch. It shows that, he's willing to go the extra mile and play against people, and we'll get a nice look to see if he's actually truly ready for next season. But I think it's overall a good thing. It's going to be nice to see him continue his season, especially with the hot finish that he had. So we'll see how he can do against men.
Playing with NHL players, timing, all that sort of stuff too.
Exactly.
Dave, the European free agent, Russian guy, is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Vinogradov, is that him?
There it is.
Thank
you.
Okay.
I really like him. So like Pinchuk, he's got size, but for me, I actually feel that he uses that size well. And he's got all the skill in the world. Like when I was kind of comparing, there's another one, Danil Amazarov, I believe his name is. I may have just completely butchered that, so I apologize.
Amarizin, I think. Yeah.
Amarizin, thank you. Yeah. But between the three, it's been a while since I've looked at all three. But between the three, like the one that you just mentioned really caught my eye as someone who, if not this season, because he is signed for one more year. You just never know with Russia. Sometimes they can get out of their contracts. So, but next year, if he's not signed this summer, he's definitely going to be a player that I keep very close tabs on next year.
Yeah. His name is Igor Vinogradov. 6'3", 202 pounds listed for the Novgorod Torpedo franchise. He was 23 goals and 54 points this past season. And in fact, he took a massive jump because he was playing partly in the Russian Junior League last year.
Yes.
And wasn't near the score he was when he got called up to the KHL, but he made good on that this year with nearly a point per game performance. Yegor Vinogradov, a big forward.
Just turned 23.
Just turned 23 as well. Yeah. Okay, moving along, we have two Canucks prospects that are currently contesting the CHL playoffs. Of course, Braden Cootes for Prince Albert in the WHL semis, and Gabe Chiarot for the Kitchener Rangers in the OHL semis. Start with Cootes. How's he looked for this fantastic Prince Albert team?
Yeah, that team is a well-oiled machine at the moment. Cootes 2 assists in game 1, no assists in game 2, but Cootes is kind of one of those players where, if you're not watching the games, you might not, you won't see it, but he's just a player that's always so involved, and he's impacting the game every single shift. He's just a dog hound out there. He's just all over the ice. So I'm never too worried about the point production. There has, both the games, there has been a few shifts, a few plays rather, where, he's kind of let off some uncalculated giveaways, which were, a little bit uncommon. Like I didn't really see them a lot in the first 2 rounds. But they got a few days off, so I'll just chalk it up to maybe just some rust. But overall, I've loved his game. Like I even put out a bit of a montage a couple of days ago, just because I know that not everyone's watching the WHL playoffs, and if he's not, lighting up the score sheet, you might not see. But I just, 4 checks, like almost Pavel Datsyuk, like comes in out of nowhere when you think the play is going up the other ice. He comes from behind and lifts the stick and takes it the other way. He's just constantly just making stuff happen out there. So, if he's not getting assists, you can almost bet that he's probably getting a 3rd assist. He's just constantly in the play. So really, really liked Cootes. And we knew that, they dominated game 1. Game 2 went the exact opposite way. So I kind of anticipated the series to be like that. Medicine Hat is obviously a really strong team with the Ruck twins, Jonas Wu, Bryce Pickford, all that. So it's definitely going to be a fun one. I anticipate that one to go at least 6 or 7. So 1-1 in that one. And then Kitchener, they've done pretty well against Windsor right now. Gabe Chiarot specifically, no points, but again, if you go to my Twitter, I even posted a play yesterday where, he's just a 3rd line guy. He's never going to put up those gaudy numbers, but he's a player. And this is, you don't typically see a 6th rounder get an NHL contract out of their first training camp, in an NHL training camp. But Gabe Chiarot is a player that did, and plays like I posted yesterday where he's just on the penalty kill. He steals the puck, battles 3 players behind the net, goes up, steals it again, breaks in to the front of the net and hits the post. Like he's just that kind of grind your face kind of guy. He just seems like a guy that's destined to play 3rd line minutes. Wherever he is. So no points for him in the conference finals, but Kitchener is up 2-0, and it looks like they're probably going to go to the finals here. So
there's some
Yeah, they've been an excellent team all year, and Dave makes a fantastic point. Like how often do you see 6th round picks with one training camp under their belt already getting signed to NHL contracts? So the Canucks must really like what they're seeing and really like what they're hearing, and it also tells me he's probably using his time away from the rink and in the summer usefully, Gabe Chiarot, totally. Because, pick up on that, Dave, because, needless to say, the Canucks keep tabs on all of these guys. They must really like what they're hearing and seeing from Chiarot away from the rink.
Well, and you can kind of tell with the way that they draft too, right? Like it really seems like their mantra lately has just been character and, guys that are willing to put in the work. And, it was kind of a vindication for me because I remember being in Washington and, Gabe Chiarot was a name that really stood out to me. So I talked about him a lot. And, it's tough because, you're not trying to boost up this 6th round pick as if he's the next Sidney Crosby, but he is a player that really, really stood out. And like I said, I think they probably see his work ethic on and off the ice. He just seems like one of those meat grinders that is just going to work his way to nothing above a 3rd round guy, but he just seems destined to be a bottom 6 energy type player. And it's showing, statistically, he was doing fantastic in Brantford when the season started. He's got there you go. He's got a really nice shot. But I wouldn't anticipate goals are going to be his go-to calling card. I think shifts like this that you're seeing on the screen are just him to a T. He just this is shorthanded 1 against 4. Look
at that.
Exactly. He hits the post. He almost scores. And that's just the type of shifts you see. Like, he doesn't hit the score sheet all the time. And especially when he went to Kitchener, he was given a nice roll out the gate, but he just wasn't getting the points. And so I think he kind of gets drummed out a little bit because he's not, putting up 60 points, 70 points at the OHL that you'd like to see. But I do think overall there is a package there to at least be excited for that, I don't know, Alex Burrows type, I guess. Not actually Alex Burrows, not comparing him to him, but like that type of, that shit disturber, if you will.
And we've also seen other guys already outkick the coverage in that regard, like Ty Mueller. He's getting NHL games ahead of some other guys because he's working at it and he's working hard. And you might have another one there in Chiarot. There's Kieran Dervin news. What's happening with Kieran Dervin?
Yeah, the old elusive Kieran Dervin news. Yeah, he a little bit of a surprise. He was committed to Penn State, and it turns out, as most have, he decided to decommit, and he recommitted to Michigan. So he'll be with the Wolverines. I believe it starts next year. There was some conflicting reports, but I believe it starts next year. So he should be with Michigan. Typically just a whatever move, but I do find it interesting just because we've seen, Penn State seems to be, enduring a bit of an exodus. If you look at their final game roster, you can pretty much cross out almost every single one of their forwards right now. And so you can add Kieran Dervin to the list. And, I do find it, Canucks centric wise interesting because I did feel that because of the players leaving, I did think Kieran Dervin might have gotten a bit of maybe even a top 6 role with Penn State. Whereas now with Michigan, you can almost bet that he's going to be drowned, at least to a third line role, if not fourth. So while it's awesome that he's obviously going to one of the best schools in the Big Ten, so great for him, might enjoy a long run. I do find it interesting just development wise for next season, what it will do for his overall playing time. But you never know. For him, it's more than likely a long.
Oh, we lost him. There he is.
Nope. He's likely not going to be a candidate to sign next year anyways. So
yeah. So if we don't love the setup on Dervin, Dave, give me a Canucks prospect where you quite like the setup for next year, where you think we've got a prospect ready to take that next step and get some helium.
Not necessarily into the NHL. You mean just at their level, wherever their level is. Yeah.
Sure. I mean, obvious answer is Coots, but I'll go with Riley Patterson only because I do think, we saw Manny Malhotra give him not only a role, but a top 6. Like, he was getting really good minutes in top line power play in Abbotsford. Obviously, Abbotsford's going to look a lot different next year, but because he switched to the center and it looks like he's going to stick to that. He went 4 for 13 in his first game and then went 9 for 13 in the faceoff dot in his second game. So over the games, he got progressive. Like, he showed that he can hang as a centerman. And I do think, barring them going out and getting, Braden Coots will be one guy that'll push him down. But I do think he should get a solid role as, probably a top 6 center in Abbotsford. So I think, he had a really good year in the OHL. I think it's going to be really nice seeing him, what he can do with a top 6 role in the AHL next year. Because, there's obviously some excitement. I think, you do have to dial it back a little bit with a prospect like Riley Patterson. The OHL is a bit of a different beast. He is now 20. So we'll see how he does as a, first year AHLer. But I think Riley Patterson is definitely in a really nice spot, given the Canucks' lack of depth up the middle.
That would be amazing if it was Coots Patterson down the middle.
That's what you need. That's what this is for. Like, you need that sells tickets, and that just brings up development. And that's why it's so important that the Canucks have 10 draft picks this year and 10 more next year, because this is what your AHL should look like. It should be, you always want the veterans, your Chase Waters with that third, fourth line center, but you want those youngins pushing up people up on the top as well. So I agree. It's going to be a ton of fun. They'll be fun to watch again.
Well, on that score, Dave, wrap up the AHL Abbotsford Canucks season for us. It ended last weekend, but what did you make? What were the storylines? What were your observations coming off the Calder Cup championship?
4-game winning streak. They got
the big club. Yeah.
There you go. Good thing there's no draft picks at stake. Or it's 4-game winning streak. They finished ahead of the Calgary Wranglers in the Pacific Division. So they were pretty much at the basement the entire year until the very last bit. So kudos to them. Yeah, for me, pretty much since Christmas, it's been about small victories, not actual victories. It's just been about development. So some things that really stood out for me is I really like that Riley Patterson got a little bit of a look. He now, has a 4-game stint to kind of take over in the offseason and, show what he needs to work on throughout the summer. I really, really liked what Bennett Shimmick brought. He was one of my top candidates for free agency going into the NCAA free agency, and I do find it very interesting that they got almost basically a free look with an AHL contract, and he delivered. He was their top producer, top line scorer basically I believe it was 12 points in his last 13 games. So he was almost a point per game at the AHL level. And just, his vision really stood out. So he's on an AHL contract next year. And I do wonder if that changes. Like, I do wonder if they bring him over to, like, he's probably going to be at development camp. And I do wonder if he does well there, if, he ends up getting, maybe an NHL contract. Like, he showed some good stuff. And I do think he was worthy. But if not, it's a free look for the full season of next year. As an AHL contract. And finally, I guess I'll just go with Ty Young. He had a really, really tough start, so much so that, his stats were basically never going to come back to earth. So you kind of just wrote that off. But he went down to Kalamazoo, got a bit of a reset, which has kind of been notorious for a nice reset. Get some Ian Clark time in Kalamazoo. And, he comes up, and again, his stats aren't going to show it because they were never going to come back. But he played really well. Got a shutout in his last. He ended the season on a 3-game winning streak with a shutout in there. So, some nice baby steps for him for what otherwise was a really terrible start. So it was nice to see him kind of hone it back in and bring his game back. So yeah, a couple wins. We'll see what happens with Danilo Klimovic. He ties Linus Karlsson for the franchise leading goals. I like to assume that he's likely moving on to greener pastures, but we'll see what happens with him.
Kudryavtsev, is he
going to be okay if Danilo makes?
I'm not. I'm going to disagree with Dave Hall. No, I'm just joking. Kudryavtsev, would you bet that he makes the opening night roster of the Vancouver Canucks?
Ooh.
I'll make that bet. I mean, at the very least, he's going to be in the running. I wouldn't expect anything more than a 6'7" type of guy, like basically where the P.O. Josephs are in the world. But, he's a guy that I was I was on your show at the starting of the month before he got called up, like basically banging on the door, like where is this kid? Why isn't he getting his time? I know he was injured, but it's time. And, he showed well in his games, 15 minutes-ish, didn't blow the roof on fire, but that's not what his game is going to be. He's a real simple, get-the-job-done type of defenseman, really smart first-pass kind of guy, uses his stick extremely well, and, I think he showed that he can definitely hang. So I think he should be in the running, and, I wouldn't be surprised if he's that 6th defenseman come September.
A veteran defender, either P.O. Joseph or somebody else in that mold, and then it's Kudryavtsev and Mancini, and maybe even EPD if you want to put him in the mix. A 3-man battle for 2 spots.
Yeah,
I got another name. Jack Thompson. Like he was injured, but he looked real. Like he overnight, that jet woo for Jack Thompson like changed the Abbotsford defense overnight. Like it all instantly came in as the top line power play guy. Like took over from the kids, Kirill and Sawyer Minio. Just looked. At the AHL level, look dynamic. He's a big body. Of course, it's just the American Hockey League, but I think he showed enough that I don't think he's going to just be happy with an AHL roster spot next year. Like, I think he could push.
His limited NHL minutes are actually pretty good.
Yeah.
10 points in 34 games. Not bad.
Yep.
Yeah,
and,
right shot.
From Dave's mouth and fingertips to the NHL transaction wire. He was talking about KK last time he was on the show, like literally, 48 hours later within that, Dave, up was KK playing for the Vancouver Canucks. Last question, my dude. U18s, tons of draft prospects over there in Slovakia making their final push before June. Who's caught your eye at the U18s?
Well, the biggest one for me is actually a 2027 draft pick, and that's Zilkin for Canada. He's been unreal. Like, leads the team in scoring. I don't think he leads the tournament still, but I believe he's 2 in scoring in the entire tournament. Just a bulldog too. Like he's all over the ice. He's just a really fun player. And, someone that I obviously, watching some draft stuff for a guy like Nikita Klepov, saw him in Saginaw a couple times, and he's he's really caught my eye. But another guy for, I'm hoping for, fingers crossed for the Canucks pick either with the Minnesota or even the second round is Mathis Preston. He's a guy that I've really liked all season and kind of assumed and still assume that he will drop only because of his size. But if he drops to either late first or even early second, like he's a really nice upside swing, super speedy, just has a nose for the net and, has a nose for that flash as well. So I think he's a name that Canucks fans should definitely keep an eye on, hoping to slide, hopefully in that second round. I really think his size is going to come into play here.
If I can just follow up on Dima Zhilkin, the forward for Canada, who's the 2027 draft. I mean, DuPont, Alexei Joseph, that massive Privarov, Russian forward who lit up the Russian leagues this year. Is Zhilkin of that mix? Like, is he like a top 3, top 5 candidate for the 2027 draft or making his way into that conversation, Dave?
I think he has to be making his way into that spot for sure. I mean, the U18s are a nice spot to kind of showcase yourself. And, as you see it here, 75 points in 59 games as a, 17-year-old is nothing to scoff at. 100 PIMs, you love that as well. He's definitely a name that I would be keeping on the short list. Of course, I believe he's a winger. So, we'll see. Obviously, the centers are always going to, and, the defense are always going to get that top spot. But he's definitely a name that I'd be keeping tabs on next year for sure.
All right, buddy. Instructive as always. We learn every time we talk to you, Dave Hall. You can read him on Canucks Army, and you absolutely must tune in to the Blackfish Prospect Show with Dave Hall and Tyson Cole. It drops every Wednesday on the Canucks Army YouTube feed. We love the new show. We love having you on ours, Dave. Thanks for this. We'll catch up before the draft for sure.
Yeah, thanks for having me, and good luck on the links today.
Thank you. So here's some price from the historic Wall Center in the Pacific Toyota Dealer Studio, built by Arbor Lee. Big game downtown. Make Sheraton Vancouver Wall Center your home base for game night and beyond. Walk to the action. Sleep like a champ. Plan your stay at wallcenter.com. Vancouver Whitecaps FC may never lose again. And I do actually mean that. They could run the table the rest of the season and then make their way out of Vancouver.
I have had the thought, like, what happens on a night they lose? And the only thing that I can come up with is that they absolutely start to think it just happens because you show up. They get so good that they are guilty of just saying, it'll just happen because we're showing up. That's how good they are, that they might be guilty of that sometime down the road.
I have had the thought they win a 5th straight Canadian championship, they win Leagues Cup, they win the Supporters Shield, they win MLS Cup. Then how can you move them? How can you move them?
It would be amongst the most embarrassing things to happen.
It would. 3-1, they demolish Colorado at BC Place on Saturday. The first 15 to 25 minutes of this match looked like pros versus Joes. Colorado barely touched the ball. Jake Sabally, Brian White score for a 2-0 lead after 23 minutes. White would add another in the 85th minute to put this match away. 6 different caps notched assists, and there were some beautiful goals.
Yeah, they really
on Saturday. A pretty feed. 2 of them. Berhalter to Caicedo to White. Kuba springs White all by himself down the left flank. That was a pretty one. And then Thomas Muller with a one-touch volley pass off a cross.
From Ocampo, yeah.
From Ocampo.
Yeah, you're right. All these
to Sabally. I mean, they were just as pretty as goals come. You could, you could design them for heaven's sakes, and they wouldn't look prettier than what the Whitecaps did on
I was
Saturday.
thinking about this because my sister-in-law was at the game, and she doesn't usually go to these kinds of games, and she was like, it was so much fun, and the goals were great. And I thought to myself, like, the goals were great. Like, this team's, like, people think of, not like non-soccer fans, think of soccer as the low-scoring game. Except, at least in this market, for the Whitecaps, they score almost 3 goals per game. Like, that's hockey level. So, as a hockey culture, you're not dismayed if you see a 3-1 game, and if the Canucks win 3-1, you're not like
and score pretty goals.
Yeah,
that's a great night at Rogers.
There's very little offense.
This year at Rogers Arena,
Yeah.
was.
So you show up to the stadium now, and your chances of you seeing a 3-goal performance at home, it's pretty high. Like,
Well, 27,589 showed up on Saturday, a lower bowl sellout. It is the 19th consecutive MLS match where the Caps have drawn 20,000 plus. Alas, that's only fueling more fear about relocation, right? As more and more people get on board with this fantastic team. They've been fantastic for a year plus now because they're winning, they're drawing crowds. You know, I was thinking as I was driving into work today, if they were losing and the fan support was at 16, 17,000 per game.
Like the Grizzlies,
everybody could understand.
Like nobody was going to Grizzlies
could
games.
Understand that.
Nobody was
but
going.
It seems like every week now I have a conversation with someone who just doesn't understand the whole picture. Like, well, how could the Whitecaps be leaving when they're drawing such great crowds and they have such a good team? Loud chants of Save the Caps after the anthem. Banners displayed in the south side. Hands off our Caps. We will fight for our club and we will win. Hashtag Save the Caps. Another march to the match with all the fans.
Very populated
vocal
ones.
And letting their opinion
huge.
be known. Their AFTN with the video there. And they're now away from BC Place until August, 8 consecutive MLS road games. And needless to say, no news over a 3-month period would be very, very bad news.
Yeah.
I think at very least we're going to need an ownership update here in the intervening 3 months. We'll work on it. We're going to request Jeff Mallett on the show. Jeff's done the show before. Because the whole... Well, we're going to deal with this business quietly. I get it if there is somebody there. Mm-hmm. But if nobody is there, then I do believe the community needs to know here so that it can put forth its best foot, much like the fans did in Columbus when they wound up saving the crew in their city.
Everybody is equating the announcement of that Las Vegas complex as bad news, and that's where they're going. The awkward thing would be, though, like you can't announce at some point this year, even at the end of the year, you can't say they're going to Vegas. Ian, like that stadium's not going to be built for 5 years. Are they going to go play?
Need a temporary home, yeah.
They can't play in the USL team's home. That's too small. I guess they could rent at the Raiders.
Allegiant?
Yeah.
Wow, it's a big house.
It's a big house.
Well, the result did not go as planned, but otherwise a glorious night for Vancouver Rise FC Friday before a sold-out Swangard Stadium. There's Stephanie Labbe, sporting director and club leadership, bringing out the NSL trophy on Friday pre-match. They put the banner on the scoreboard, marking their title in the inaugural season of the Northern Super League. Unfortunately, they lose 3-2. To Toronto in a rematch of last year's championship.
With the 2-1 second half lead.
Yeah. Beautiful goal in that game, too, for the Rise. VFC was minutes or seconds away from their first win of the CPL season against the reigning champions, Atletico Ottawa. They gave up an equalizer at the death. Poor VFC. They're now 0-3-1, which is the same record as Pacific FC, who lost over the weekend. The BC teams wiping up the rear of the CPL table, both of them with matching 0-3-1 records, winless.
Common ownership there, too, so
After
they're not loving that.
8 games.
Like giving up leads, honestly. And you're about to get to the third team that did it on the weekend. It was not a great weekend for Vancouver teams with leads.
Warriors lose in astonishing fashion. Infamous record-setting fashion.
Yeah.
And are now out of the NLL playoffs. 10-7. Halifax wins it. Vancouver held a 7-1 lead at halftime and did not score again. 9 straight goals for the Thunderbirds. That's an NLL playoff record. The 6-goal comeback ties a playoff record, which has been achieved just 3 other times in the history of the league.
It defies description.
So I am not a lacrosse X's and O's guy. I tuned in at halftime after, NFL draft, NHL playoffs. I'm like, oh my God, they're winning 7-1. What a defensive effort. They're going to put this game away.
I tuned out at halftime.
And then
because
just
the 7-1
sat there
lead.
and watched this, and I'm like, oh, look at that. It's 7-4. Oh, look at that. It's 7-5. They're tied. Oh, they have a 9-7 lead. Look at the clock. Vancouver's going to lose this game.
Yeah.
Really disappointing for GM head coach Kurt Malosky and his charges outside of a 4-minute stretch in the second quarter. The Warriors didn't do much in this game other than take penalties and surrender shots. Goaltender Christian Del Bianco faced 71 shots and saved 61 of them. Both those numbers are the most in an NLL playoff game in 21 years.
Jeez.
The Warriors had some troubles offensively down the stretch, as we noted. Late starters, long periods between goals. We also noted this Halifax team nearly won here a few weeks ago. They were up 2 in the fourth quarter. They were a live underdog, a little more akin to an 8th seed in the NHL, maybe just not this year, than an 8th seed in the NBA. And the doomsday scenario played out. The best regular season in Warriors history goes for naught. The only solace, they were not alone. 3 other upsets in the quarterfinals of the NLL. Take a look at this bracket. The 4th, 8th, 7th, and 6th seeds all advanced. The only higher seed to win was Georgia, but that was against the 3-time reigning defending champion Buffalo Bandits. So upsets across the board.
Wow.
And look, I know travel is expensive, and it's harder to sell games with the short run-up. There were a couple of really bad crowds in the NLL this week. But I do think the league has to look at a best-of-3 first round, right?
Well,
you do best-of-3 in the semis and the finals. I know it adds another week, a couple of extra games, and more travel expenses. But there just seems to be an unfairness with single-game elimination in the quarters.
Yeah, although, we always say elimination games are for a league that doesn't have a lot of eyes on it, one way to get eyes on you is elimination games, right?
Yeah. Well, I know one person who had fun at the game. Can we get the producer's cam on there? Our intern Elijah Ford appeared on the TSN broadcast celebrating a Halifax goal. Explain yourself, young man. What happened?
Well, obviously the comeback was unbelievable. I was rooting for Halifax because a good buddy of mine, Levi Toohey, was drafted by the Thunderbirds a year ago, and he was lucky enough to be a part of that game. So, have a night for the boys.
A few lone rogue Halifax supporters at Rogers Arena, and they got a lot of camera time in the second half
as you would expect.
As all those goals were going in. Well, I'm glad your buddy is heading on in the NLL playoffs, Elijah. Mariners sweep a weekend set in St. Louis. They've won 4 in a row to get back to a game and a half within the AL West League. Very weird season for the Mariners. They get swept, they sweep, they get swept, they sweep. They're in Minnesota tomorrow before starting a 6-game homestand. They win yesterday after Rob Refsnyder challenges a brutal, and I mean, this thing wasn't close. It was several balls outside. He gets punched out. He taps the helmet. Review. It's a ball. He homers later in the at-bat.
Wow.
M's win. That's how it's supposed to play out.
Yep.
Love the new rule.
I do too. They do have to speed it up a little bit, I think. But other than that, it's...
I love the strategy of it, too, because you only get the 2, so when are you going to use them? Jays win 2 of 3 versus Cleveland, but the better news is soon to come. Trey Savage, the scheduled starting pitcher tomorrow versus Boston. Red Sox make some news on the weekend. They fire Alex Cora and a bunch of his coaches after a dreadful 11-17 start.
And they do that did you notice they did it in front of the Orioles banner? So their Red Sox management is announcing the firings and everything with the Orioles backdrop. Like,
it's very odd.
And people are like, this is a train wreck of an organization right now, and the Orioles are being dragged down with them.
Blue Jays are 5-2 in their last 7. They're 12-15 still on the year. George Stringer may be back this week from that broken left toe. Conservatively speaking, Addison Barger within the next couple of weeks. They got hot last year in May. It's time to get hot again, John Schneider. And Blue Jays. C's, they won the first 3 games versus Tri-City last week, and then they lost the weekend. Only managing a 6-game series split with the Dust Devils. Now, some important context here. The C's pitchers no-hit Tri-City into the 7th inning Friday at a beautiful nooner. Alas, they lose 3-0 in extras. On Saturday, they faced Angels #1 prospect Tyler Bremner, the 2nd overall pick in last year's draft, one of the top right-handing pitching prospects in all of baseball. And he's a Canadian. His dad grew up in Mississauga. In fact, I met his dad. I saw his Vancouver-based agent, Dan Vertleib. You know, Dan. I was walking through the stands there on Saturday. Dan hollered at me. So I met his dad, Jason, who was at the game. Bremner, incidentally, belongs in Double-A. He's pitched to a 1.02 ERA through 4 starts. He's just a little too good as a college pitcher coming out of the draft for this level, I think. And the C starters, Johnny King, Austin Cates, Landon Marudas, were all effective over the weekend. That Jays pitching development continues to grow arms, produce good stories. Canadians back at it tomorrow, 7 p.m. at the Nat. This irregular 2-week homestand. Begin a series with the Eugene Emeralds with a stadium replica giveaway. So get there early tomorrow. You want a Nat Bailey Stadium replica. And the club has some smoking deals going on right now. $99 gets you the starting 9-pack, 9 vouchers, good for games in April, May, and June. Get your tickets, 604-872-5232 or CanadiansBaseball.com. Seahawks 2026 draft class. And look, they made more than 4 picks, which was good. They made 8 picks as it stands, which is one of the things that John Schneider wanted to accomplish. They went into this draft with just 4. That was lowest in the league. Bud Clark, the second-round safety, was a riser. A very experienced player at TCU going back to 2022. He was on the field in the college football playoff national championship game in 2022. Smart, instinctive safety. Maybe not a grade A tackler or coverage guy, but he does a lot of things well. At a position of need for the Seahawks because, of course, they lost safety Kobe Bryant to free agency and the Bears.
I think Julian Neal looks pretty intriguing, too.
Neal. So, first of all, Neal's got a lot of riz, as many a corner does. One of the bigger, more physical corners in the draft. There was a neat story there that he was supposed to be sent all 32 caps.
Only bought one as a
Didn't happen,
backup.
So he sent a family member out to buy a cap. They brought home just one, a Seahawks hat, so he had one at the ready when he was selected. Known as one of the more physical corners in the draft, and 7th rounder Andre Fuller as well out of Toledo. And Toledo has produced some terrific DBs here of late. A 1st rounder last year, a couple of years ago, 2nd rounder this past year. He's a converted safety, so he's a physical kid too. And the guard, Bo Stevens, he's from Iowa, and Iowa just produces.
Was it Bud Clark or Julian Neal saying that they actually model their game after Cam Chancellor? One of them.
That was
one of them.
Good question, but I saw that as well. Yeah, it was one of them. Loaded up 3 corners and a safety, so really addressed that defensive secondary. Quite an uneventful draft, though, must say. Not as many player trades as you would have hoped for. Wildly divergent boards as players staying in school and taking advantage of that NIL money really depleted the depth of this draft. I saw Andrew Brand, a former Packers executive. He said rounds 4 to 7, like all of day 3, was basically a write-off. You saw teams taking hope bet guys. You saw teams taking like specialty players, like 3rd-string blocking tight ends, special teamers. Edge Jonathan Grenard wound up being traded Minnesota to Philadelphia for a pair of 3rd-round picks. D. Winters, fine linebacker from San Francisco, traded to Dallas. And defensive end Tyree Wilson, a former top 10 pick, goes from the Raiders to the Saints, but no Max Crosby, Kayvon Thibodeau, A.J. Brown, no quarterbacks trades.
But I saw the Seahawks are included in this group, but others as well, that, going with 4th-year guys.
Yeah.
And taking mature, ready to contribute, non-project players.
Yeah.
especially for a good team, right?
There were a lot of like 24, 25-year-olds in this draft,
Yeah.
and in a typical year when you have all the underclassmen coming out, they would be pushed down a little bit. But
NIL money, as you say, keep
well,
in the
that's
middle.
it. And I think teams looked at it and went, well, forget about ceilings. Let's just get floors. Let's just get guys who can play in the league. 2 Canadians drafted both by the LA Chargers. Akeem Mesidor, a defensive lineman from the University of Miami, and Ottawa was taken in the first round. And then later in the draft, they took a guard, Logan Taylor from Boston College. He's from Nova Scotia. A bunch of Canadians signed after the draft. CFL draft tomorrow. We'll look forward to that in the BC Lions. Results of the daily poll question from Friday asked you, should the Canucks hire Lawrence Gilman as GM? Yes or no? People said
yes.
Indeed. Percentage?
60.
70. James, Gilman is better suited as president with Johnson or Doan or as GM. We saw a lot of that. A lot of people wanted to make him president. He's not been a GM, but okay. Sheila, he's VP of Hockey Ops for Columbus. Why would he leave that position to be GM of the Canucks? Good question, Sheila. He'd be the final decision maker with the Canucks.
VP is actually not that high. It's not what
some teams have it. Like, again, this is why don't get hung up on titles. Iserman is the VP of Hockey Operations and GM in Detroit, but he's the final decision-making authority on hockey ops.
But generally,
other teams call it a president.
Generally, it's that GM title that gives you that, ironically. Like in most businesses, VP would be above a GM, but not the case in hockey.
Mike says, yes, checks essentially every box for a competent organization. Hiring him as a tap-in Bury. It's the Canucks, though, so 3-putt bogey. He's predicting at least. Errors and omissions. I don't think I had an error and omission. I did not, Blake. Perfect show. Well done. Thanks for joining us, everybody. Appreciate you spending some time connecting with the program. Please do subscribe to all our assorted channels, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts. Follow on social, X, Insta, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, Blue Sky, live on many of those platforms, noon Pacific time, weekdays. And, of course, please do support the community sponsors you hear us talking about. Keep it local.